we finished off last video where we were moving the helicopter and we actually got it to move a little bit more fancy. You can see when we hit forward it tips down a little and it switches directions, so it looks a bit more interesting and polished when it's moving. And now we have to start adding in the game logic. And as mentioned before, the point of the game is to hit these rings in order, and it will check the time when you hit them. And then when you get to the end, I'm going to have to hit this last ring. This will be closed, and we'll open it with an animation, and when you get to this, it'll add up all your times and say this is your final time for beating the level. And as you can see right now, all of these rings kind of are gray. They're not lit up, and you can't see which one you need to go to next. So we need to fix that, and we need to start figuring out and making sure that we can know when we hit these rings. So when we collide with these rings, we actually do the right thing. So let's just test, we're going to test collision with the rings first to see if they light up. And to do that, when I stop, you can see that these light back up. We're going to go down here in our prefab folder again. So I'm doing this on the prefab because all of these are instances of the prefab, and they will follow along with whatever I do in the prefab here. So CheckPoint L is what I'm going to select in my prefab folder. Come down, add component, add virtual hammer for my visual scripting, diagram behavior, and open the editor for my checkpoint. So these, remember, these are events that Unity calls, and I'm going to have to add a specific event here to know when it hits the trigger that is on the checkpoint. You can see that the checkpoint has a sphere collider that is a trigger, and this sphere collider is what's going to tell it when I collide with it. It's a trigger so I can pass through it. That trigger allows me to pass through it, but still tells me when I collide it. If this wasn't a trigger, it would actually stop me from moving through it. So I need a special event for that. I'm going to go to New Tab. Here's all my events. I want to go to Physics, because that deals with when I interact with things. And I want Ontriggerenter. So Ontriggerenter, this is going to fire off when I collide with that sphere that's on the trigger, or on the checkpoint. And what do we have to do here? Well, our colors are going to be driven by an animation. And we're going to change the animation to change the actual colors for it. And we're going to change this a bit later when we add some more logic in, but I just want to show you how to interact with the Ontriggerenter right now. So since that's handled in the animation on my checkpoint, I'm going to come over here. It has the animator, and this is the checkpoint animator for this. I'm going to double click this right here, and it's going to bring up the animator. And if you don't know too much about the animator, that's okay. We're not going to create, these are already created for you right now, but these are states that I can go into that will play different animations and change the colors based on the animations. And the one I'm just going to do is this checkpoint pulse. When I touch it, I'm going to put it to checkpoint pulse. I could put it to checkpoint checked, but we'll do that later when we have the logic in that. Maybe I'll just do it to checkpoint checked right now. I'm going to go back here, go back into prefabs, click on my checkpoint L to bring that back up. And to talk to this animator, I need a variable for it so that I can get it in the graph. So I'm going to go to variables. And the type I want is animator, because that's the component that I want. Animator. I'm going to call this CP animator. That's fine. CP animator. Create that. It's just a container. It's not filled in. I have to fill it in. Now I have access in this script on the checkpoint to talk to its animator component. And to do that, I'm simply going to go to my variables, find my CP animator. I'm going to drag off of it, and what I want to do is I want to play an animation. And play animation, you can see it takes in a state name, a layer, and normalized time. This is the one I want right here. And it already hooks it up. Remember, if it has an execution, I have to bring this through so that when this fires, it starts firing the chain of logic through here. And I don't care about the layer or the normalized time right now. What I care about is the state name. We can find those state names in our editor. So I'm going to do checkpoint checked. I have to spell it exactly like this with the correct capitalization, or it won't do it. Checkpoint checked. So, checkpoint checked. I believe it was spelled that way. And on Ontriggerenter, when I touch one of these checkpoints, when I enter the trigger, it is going to tell the animator, play this state. Let's see if it worked. So you can see now, when I hit these rings, it is telling the animator to play that animation, and we start to get some feedback based on that. And this one's going to be short because I just wanted to show you that. We're going to change the inner workings inside of here once we add the logic, because right now I can go to this checkpoint first, and then this checkpoint, and then this checkpoint. And in the game, we don't want that. You have to hit 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to make this one look like it's activated and this one be gray. And then we're going to advance the checkpoints to do that using some logic when we make a game main. So that's Ontriggerenter and how we get that to work. You can see in checkpoint here, I'll stop playing this. And in the diagram for that, it's very simple. I just made an Ontriggerenter event, and Unity calls this whenever you you interact with something that has a trigger on it. I made a variable to get my animator so that I could talk to it, filled it in, brought it into the graph, called the appropriate function, and filled in the correct state, which I found in the animator for this. So next we're going to be doing some game logic. We're going to make a game main. So I'll see you in the next video.